Season 40, episode 13. What'd you think? My take overall is I enjoyed it. I enjoy Survivor, period. So I enjoy watching the game. But in episode 13 of Winners at War, I'm still impressed, somewhat negatively, with the level of gameplay of some of the players. I'll talk about it. That said, wow, I can't help but point out again and again Tony's expertise. I love his mindset, and in this episode, in this season, I love his approach. I haven't always loved it. And I think he knew that it was a little unbridled to be regularly successful. But boy, his personality is full sail, and he's thinking while he's playing this game in a way that I very, very much appreciate. The episode starts out as the players are returning from tribal council. And Michelle's quote is great, right? She's like, I feel like I'm bringing a butter knife to a gunfight. Good for her, but also good for her that she isn't feeling down and depleted and kind of de-energized by it. She's got such a good handle on, oh, this damn game. All right, well, they haven't seen the Jersey Girl yet. Love that. That's energy. That's what it needs. That's what a good player needs to take all the way to this point in the game. Who knows? I mean, she really is on the outs, and it's going to be tough. But it's nice that she's still maintaining that get up and go. Love it. Jeremy, on the other hand, on his way back from tribal, is wondering why he's so consistently targeted. And for me, whenever I make comments about these folks and the way they play, please know that I'm always talking about what I perceive to be true in the game. So lots of people have different opinions. Like if I think Jeremy's being sincere and this is what he's honestly feeling in the moment, I'm saying that. Lots of people will write and say, oh no, I think that was gameplay. I think he was trying to snow somebody. I think he was saying that so he would garner some sympathy or whatever. My opinion is he wasn't trying to garner sympathy. My opinion is that Jeremy was expressing this frustration with why he was being targeted so frequently and this confusion about why. And I wish he weren't so confused, because Jeremy is a threatening player with whom you'd sit at the end. If you're at the end with him, your chances are not as good as being at the end with someone less likable, less skillful, less connected in positive ways to other jurors. Anyway, that's just my take. Okay, let's talk about Denise. I love her. I know her personally. I feel as if this game is taking a bit of a toll on her. But I also still love the way she's playing. She is expressing, perhaps unintentionally at the last tribal council, not this one, how she is frustrated in the way she responded to Jeremy. But it was also a good response in that she didn't say anything that she could necessarily regret. But people know she's kind of at her wit's end. But then in this episode, this endure, let go, tattoo scenario tells us a lot about who she is. She's thoughtful, she's insightful, she's introspective. She's thinking about what life means to her. And here, she's not a tattoo person, right? But when something strikes you like that, that's what happened with me in my first tattoo. Life is short. And I really think she's thinking it might be worthwhile. Who knows if she'll actually do it. But think about that. Endure, let go. That combination and the decision between which to do when, that's life. And if in Survivor you can balance those and make your choice about how to proceed while not losing your mind, good on you. And good on her. As you saw in this episode, she's still playing. You know, she plays in a different way from other players. She's not flashy and loud. And often people are wondering if they can rely on what was said. Yet she looks trustworthy and sounds trustworthy and believable, even after having ousted the queen. Lots to learn in watching her. Lots to incorporate in your gameplay, into that toolbox of tactics if you're a good Survivor player.
Oh my God, the conversation between Tony and Jeremy. What a riot.
How about this conversation between Jeremy and Tony? Who's serious in it? Which one of them? Is either of them, or are they playing each other? Either way, the kind of deciding the fun level of it versus the frustration level of it is interesting. How many days in a week? Hey, we played 10 days. It's 2 weeks. No, it's 5 days. If I work 5 days a week. Oh my gosh. When you think about Survivor and what it is that you should prioritize and sometimes let things go, when somebody calls 10 days 2 weeks and somebody else says, oh no, it's not 2 weeks yet because we don't have days off on the weekend, this is one of those things that need not be an argument. Perhaps it wasn't. Maybe they were funning with one another. But interesting that was shown to us as something expressive of the dynamic between those two. I'm fascinated to see where this goes with them, and then we do in the rest of the episode. How many of you watch this episode and wonder how it can be that Ben seems so unaware of how he's being used? My take, I think it's real. I think Ben, in general, knows that there are dynamics in the game in which people play one another. But I think Ben detaches from that too much with respect to when it is himself. So I think he's clueless about the extent to which, for quite a long time, he is being manipulated, influenced, whatever you want to call the word, in order to make him feel able to go in whatever direction his puppeteers seem will benefit them. Fascinates me. I would be, personally, so skeptical the more smooth and comfortable and convincingly someone approached me, like the way Tony approached Ben here. Tony really does seem to have his thumb on the smoothness of what's required to move through this game in the least threatening way. It's admirable.
So much for those guys' plans. Nick wins immunity. And that's Survivor, my friends.
Who should our target be? Nick? Jeremy? Blah, 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 blah. Oh yeah, no, the target's Nick. Okay, slide puzzle challenge. How many of you watched this challenge and felt angst for Michelle as she struggled and struggled and struggled? Poor thing. But did you notice how she just didn't give up? The woman just kept trying. God, I love that about her. Boom! Nick wins. Of course he did. How often in Survivor are you impressed with how people come together, plan, and decide on a particular target? and then that target wins immunity right when they need it most. It is not, I don't think, wholly coincidental. I think there's a little more to it. I think there is this inherent sense of danger that a target feels, even if they aren't, a really aware person, and even if they haven't gotten the specific details. When it is, when you have the feeling that you're the one kind of on the precipice, like you really could be in danger, or even you're wondering, am I missing it? There's something that happens, and there's just that extra oomph, that energy, that drive that pushes you, whether it's in a challenge or whether it's in your sense of awareness as to what the gameplay is around you. It becomes heightened in that state, I think. And so that is my understanding of and belief as to why, more often than not, when someone is targeted, people aren't able to not communicate that to the target subtly and non-verbally throughout the day. And when it comes time to compete, they somehow, pull it out. There's just this extra threat they feel that makes them push. And Nick's driven anyway. Nick's talking about what he wants to do and really gonna, push to the end. And wow, at this point, this far in the game, imagine, I wish I could help you understand what it feels like to put on that immunity. It's a gift. It really is valuable later in the game. It's an emotional thing, but it's also a mental reprieve that isn't available any other way. The exhaustion that underlies good game playing permanently, just consistently, is kind of tempered a bit when you have that immunity around your neck. You don't have to, for that moment, up until that tribal, have to be as almost hyper as you are internally, usually, when that goes around your neck. So I feel great whenever I see somebody getting that, earning it, and I know how it feels. So just looking at him when he gets it around his neck, you just see the sense of peace. Momentarily or not, it's still valuable. And then, so much for their plans, right? So do you just drop Nick because he has immunity, you can't vote for him, and go with Jeremy, the one you were wondering about? Or do you reconsider possibilities? Do you more effectively look at what could happen and where are you in the mix? That's what's lacking, I think, in this season. I think there is a lack of serious reconsideration about what plans were made and how things are going, particularly with Sarah. So I can't wait when the season's over someday to talk with her in person and to understand more about how this unfolded. But from my perspective particularly, there are several players, and she's one of them, who could have at many times adjusted, reevaluated commitments and plans, and adjusted in a way that viewers perceive as like big moves, and jurors recognize that way too and reward when the player does them intentionally. And so I feel like there is a dearth of those types of moments, those types of contemplation. I feel as if the players are in a place where their minds are almost overwhelmed by the gameplay, by the level and continuousness of just moving forward as we've planned. And they're trying to adapt to it and patch it up and band-aid this or that. but not stepping back and looking big picture. What else could be done? I'd really love to give some kudos to Ben, kind of harken back to when I was just smitten by his physicality. But can I? Look, here he is trying to pit Michelle against Jeremy and Jeremy against Michelle. But can someone do what he did more obviously? I don't think so. Oh, Ben. This game really is, there are always exceptions. But in general, this game is about subtlety. This game is about underplaying certain things that enable other actions to take place. So, you're gonna try to help Michelle feel as if Jeremy is thinking something about her. It can't be so blatant and so obvious that it's easy for her to just instantly ascertain whether that's true. Or you're dead. You're dead in the water. You're looked at as somebody who's just outside that ability to be trusted. And that undermines your game in serious ways, particularly this far at the game when there are that few players left. Oh, Ben, I look at you almost like the bag of corn that people are dragging around because, hey, we can use the corn for now. Hey, we can use the corn for now. Okay, drop that corn and let's move on. And I feel like that's the way you have been played this entire season. It's too bad. I'm not sure. I feel like within this mix of winners, with respect to your approach to the game, that you're out of your league. I don't mean that in a personal way or in a personal attack. I just mean that as far as gameplay goes, I really haven't seen the level that's necessary to compete in this venue. Sorry, bud. Okay, last week, one of the YouTube listeners, one of my YouTube subscribers, pointed out that he wondered if the split vote could ever be used successfully ever again. And this week, on episode 13, season 40, we see them again, instantly, just kind of automatically, as if that's the way it must be played. Let's split the vote this way. And in fact, this time, here they are plotting to split it 3 ways. And as we see eventually, it's successful. So someone was wondering, will that ever be successful again? And I explained that yes, it could. And here it was. And then, just in case Michelle pulls out her 50-50 advantage, how many of you enjoyed her back and forth looking at Jeremy and Jeremy's face? Are you gonna play it for me? Or are you gonna play it for yourself? Are you gonna play it for me? And Jeff going right along with the game. Probst is in there. Well, you're gonna play it for yourself, Michelle? So Michelle, I think, was not being strategic in that moment. I think she was really trying to figure out, should I play it for Jeremy? Should I play it for myself? And she came to the conclusion that the risk of not playing it for herself may be too high. Wonderful. She plays it. She wins the advantage, getting her safe, making her safe from being voted out. And it turns out she didn't need it. Jeremy is the one voted out. But I think her calculations were accurate and reasonable. I love that she used it on herself. I love that she was safe. And that's okay. Jeremy had been targeted many, many times. Jeremy's out. And Michelle, I don't think feels badly. She knows that in the moment, given her understanding of where things were, it wouldn't have made sense to play it a different way. Jeremy's voted out, but let's touch quickly on Nick. Nick really could have done whatever he wanted there, could have been the swing vote. He could have gone with Ben or he could have gone with Jeremy. And that would have, had he gone with Ben, that would have been the perfect example of the split vote failing, where Nick took control of it, took it over, and made a switch. But Ben goes along, and Jeremy's gone. I wanted to point that out. I wanted to point out Nick's role in that successful split vote implementation, because it'll be interesting to see whether or not Nick's choice benefits him. Getting rid of Jeremy, keeping Ben in, does that benefit Nick? I wonder. I don't know that Nick spent in this entire season sufficient time building and nurturing the relationship with Jeremy that he might have. And if you've done that with Ben, is the effort invested worth it? Is Ben sufficiently trustworthy? Is Ben a sufficiently good player to count on? Questions that we'll watch unfold, harken back to Nick being the deciding factor in this tribal council. Jeff, during the tribal council, talking at length about whether or not you're okay with who you're being and who you are going to be in the game and what it takes to decide who you're going to be when you walk up to somebody. This frustrates me. This is an example and evidence of why I talk about Probst not understanding the game. Yes, I understand that he is using a shorthand to try and help people focus on their need to approach people in ways that are conscious, in ways that help forward or further their game. But I think he's missing a really, really important point. One of the most powerful parts of playing Survivor successfully is being yourself. This idea of you need to be somebody else. Are you okay with not being you? You're missing it. You've gone outside the context, and that whole mindset, I think, takes away from what actually happens within a well-played game. Survivor, well played, is played by people who best know who they are, who best understand themselves, bar none. It is about being intensely introspective as early as possible in your life, but certainly prior to entering the game of Survivor. When you're wondering who you are in the game, you're not capable of being somebody else for this situation and then being another person over here, nor would it suit you. That kind of switching and intentional, well, I'm going to be this way and I'm going to be that way, or this person, isn't really good. It's seen, it's noticed, it's more obvious. The consistency, when a player is themselves, is what drives that underlying desire in other players to be able to trust you. And it just makes sense. This game, in which trust is not something most people think is something on which people can rely, ironically, there is a certain amount of trust that is needed often. It's just about understanding, while being aware of whether or not you can trust someone at times, that trust may be betrayed intentionally by that person, hopefully for reasonable, rational, logical, reasons. And that's the, oh my gosh, that's one of the greatest parts of the game. Being yourself and being honest and moving through the game that way, as honestly as you're capable, isn't about an old school or a new school philosophy. It's about playing the game brilliantly. That's the basic underlying support structure, I think, for what it takes to be effective. I think, perhaps unconsciously, Probst kind of pushes at times and attempts to cause players to think in more personal terms about the game. Look, it's not Probst's job to coach or help or, prevent players from making mistakes. I get it. I'm not suggesting he should. But I'm suggesting that far too few people critically evaluate the utterly important and impactful interactions at tribal council between Probst and the players. Very often, the commentary and the questioning by Probst impacts players in ways that linger. So, is it players' responsibility to think carefully about how they respond to Probst? Absolutely, 100%. And there's no requirement, none whatsoever, to be honest when responding to his questions. Far too players fall into that trap of not being prepared to shift or to provide a non-answer to Probst. And in so doing, they're then kind of noticed by other players. And then afterwards, that commentary often comes back, or their answers come back to bite them in the ass. It's a really interesting dynamic for me because Probst's comfort level with his role, and gosh, I keep saying over and over, I know he's an awesome host, but it's filled with this power, both of the length of time he's been doing it, and now his role as executive producer, and it's much, so much more impactful with the players that it's even that much more necessary that he should be more objective, a little less kind of influential, or avoiding any potential manipulation of what it is that players are facing. He's not part of the game. And I think he likes the idea that his role is part of the game. And I think others of you would argue with me and say, hey, the host, particularly in his role at the tribal council, is part of the game. I think it's a dangerous line to cross. And I think the beauty of the game and what occurs among the participants is best served when external influences are minimal. Argue away. I know I may get some heat for what sounds like piling on Ben, but I can't let this one slide. In a close-up, Ben is really sincere in expressing that he's not going to let the game change him. And were he talking about outside the game, I'd hug him, pat him on the back, and say, yeah, brother, it's tough. After the game, there are many psychological impacts that were, years ago, unpredictable. They've long, for more than a decade, been very predictable and sadly avoided, pretend they don't exist by the powers that be, and while they pocket their billions. But whatever, back to the point. Here Ben sits looking at us in last night's episode 13 and says he's not going to let the game change him, but he's talking about his game play. He's talking about the way in which he plays in the game. And here's what I mean by being yourself, or being self-aware and understanding yourself and moving forward. It should have happened long before he entered this season. Should have happened before he entered his first season. That he, as best possible, understands who he is and isn't concerned about being changed in the game, his person, who he is being changed. Rather, having come into the game and come into this season willing to do what things he understands are necessary to win the game. This sadness, this angst, this stress around feeling as if the game may be pushing him to be someone different from who he is shouldn't be wrestled with now. That's silly. It's a game. There are rules, and within the context of the game, it's sad to have not been prepared and to be in this place where you feel necessary to express, near the end of season 40, Winners at War, that you're not going to let the game change you. I personally feel as if that takes away from the game for me. I wanted, in a Winners at War season, to more fully see players who were mature in their gameplay, who understood it, and who took it to a level beyond the level they played in the game they won prior to coming into this season. So it's tough. It's a distraction. I've talked about it for years. I've mentioned it in my YouTube videos. This idea of regretting choices you're making in the game, or of allowing your emotions to, one, overwhelm you, and then two, kind of maintain an overwhelmed place as you're playing the game, blatantly just undermines your ability to play it. And there isn't a place for that. Are we human? Absolutely. Is this season trying to expose that humanness that we all have, where even the best players are cracking? Sure. Do I accept that? Am I okay with that? Yeah, we're human, so there'll be cracks. But the game calls for that powerful, powerful player who minimizes, limits those cracks, and who repairs them quickly so they least affect the other players in ways that player who's cracking isn't in control of. It's the emotions that, and there have been many this season, that often lead to a player's demise. I'm going to change that. It's not the emotions that lead to a player's demise. It's the expression of those emotions. That better captures my perspective. So I get it. We have the emotions. I'm not saying don't have the emotions. I'm saying you, powerful Survivor player, manage them. When you express them and those emotions just squish out, that's what's problematic. I like how that tribal council touches on what happens to players when they leave the game. And it's no surprise to me that Probst doesn't touch it at all, because that's the last thing he wants to bring out, is the long-term effects and the consistent impact across players. And now there have been, 600 players? Something like that. It's a lot of people. And the consistent impact of this game, post-game, clearly isn't something that Probst wants to even touch on. Here again, post-tribal, Tony's interpersonal skills are highlighted. They're really top-notch. His interaction with Ben, beautiful. He really gets the dynamic that makes a successful Survivor player. Good on you, Tone. So Nick's talking to Michelle and describing Ben as an impulsive player. And she's right. And I think Nick sees that Ben's an impulsive player, but I don't think Nick understands what Michelle is trying to communicate. I think Nick is feeling more comfortable than he should, and Michelle, who's playing from the bottom, is trying to help him see how the two of them will need to readjust, because as safe as they feel, they should both know clearly that they're not at the top of whatever alliance is moving forward. So they are soon to become expendable, if not already, and now is the time to contemplate moves, not later. How about Michelle trying to convince Sarah that Tony is unbeatable? That's good insight. Watching Michelle, in the midst of the game, communicate to Sarah, who is clearly, connected to Tony, talk about how unbeatable Tony is one of those pivotal Survivor moments. Is Sarah a sufficiently good player? Is Sarah capable of hearing this outsider, Michelle, provide input that is incontrovertible and process it? I don't know. I have not yet seen evidence that Sarah will effectively process the idea that she cannot win against Tony. And again, now is the time she needs to process that. It will be too late at some point. So, brilliant that on camera they got it. Here is Michelle laying it out clearly for Sarah. Can she absorb it? Can she wrestle with it? Can she make choices based on its accuracy? Okay, we're on extinction. We're on the edge of extinction. What a beast, right? Natalie. The woman's a beast! Nobody's going to argue with that. Do you sense any energy depletion? How about her emotional state? Does she seem unstable? Think about the time that Natalie has spent at the edge of extinction. The woman is rocking. She's just, boy, she's impressive. And she's used that time brilliantly. Here she has a bunch of tokens. She thinks about this new challenge that just popped up and instantly knows where it will be. She knows what the rock throne is on that island, and people fly off in all kinds of directions. Boom, she heads straight for it. Wendell heads up the hill, no more a threat. She wondered if he might know too, and she gets the advantage. Awesome gameplay by Natalie. Even more awesome what she does with it. And I know you all felt this, so it's hardly even worth talking about, but just watching her choose what to do with it and how many tokens. Balls. She's going to ask for 8 tokens from Nick. He's only got 6. He'll get 2 more, and he does, from Michelle. And what else? She gets peanut butter. Wow, there's energy in a bottle. A lot of peanut butter. She knows. She's got that kind of health conscious physical awareness. She knows that she needs food and energy to be able to compete well or better in this chance to get back into the game. But what else does she do? She also buys immunity an immunity necklace for Tyson. Now let's think about that. How could that serve her? Ostensibly, the last thing you want to do is to have someone else with immunity that you are competing against. But remember, all of these people are going to be jurors. And did you see the emotional, honest expression from Tyson when he got it? when he realized that Natalie had bought him an immunity necklace? That was pretty powerful. And I think she calculated accurately. That will impact the way he thinks about her. And if he is in a position to vote, it could be all she needs. Right? Love these dynamics. Love them. They're often not as simple as they look on the surface. Right off the bat, you go, oh my gosh, why are you giving somebody else immunity? She's not just a beast, physically. Natalie's playing this game too. So here we go to the blocks on a beam challenge. Nick and Michelle join forces. Michelle gives Nick the 2 tokens. They put the disadvantage in the challenge on Ben. Here we play. Ben is being really successful in the challenge, even with the 1/3 block disadvantage. But Michelle pulls it out. She wins the immunity only because Nick and she joined forces to put the disadvantage on Ben. And who needed immunity at this point in the game? No one more than Michelle. Literally no one was as clearly, simply a target that would have gone next, probably, other than Michelle, the way this game is being played. And now she's safe. You gotta love it. Because that stirs things up, right? That makes the good players go, now what? And you watch the underlying dynamics of Survivor unfold, which is what, for me, makes the game so fun. So now you're back at camp, and you're Denise. What did you think of her move? What did you think of her approach? You know, the camera folk come and they're just filming this. So as this is being filmed, they have no idea whether Denise is being calculated or Denise is given up and ready to go. But Denise, very, very relaxedly, without emotion, talks about being aware that she's likely at the bottom. And look, she'd rather go into this next challenge with a full belly. So let's just not, beat around the bush. I'm not going to run around like a chicken with my head cut off trying to make crazy moves. How about we cook a bunch of rice so that we can, fill up, because I'm really hungry and I'd love to fill up, and I'll buy rice with my tokens. What good would they do me if I have to pass them out to somebody when I'm voted off? I think, great move. What do you think? We see that it does pan out, but I really just appreciate the thought, I think, that went into that choice and the risk evaluation. It's that unique way in which Denise plays that I think is worthy of remarkable, if you will. I like it. So as we move toward the next tribal, people are, who should it be? Denise or Nick? Nick or Denise? Denise or Nick? What's wrong with that? Even if you're in the game, if you're enmeshed in the dynamics and you've been there all this time, how is it possible that you, this close to the end, are still looking at those low on the totem pole and actually thinking which of those should go, which of those is easiest, which of those can I just target so it won't be me? That's earlier in the game strategy. Later in the game strategy requires that you look beyond that. You are probably already past the point at which you're going to pretty easily be able to take out a power player. But I think it's suicide at this point to be not considering which power players and to be not making the moves that are necessary to prevent someone else from beating you if you aren't in that catbird position. Up in a perch, up in a tree maybe. Maybe it's called a spy shack. I don't know. Spy nest. Whatever. You all know who I'm talking about. The way he has avoided somehow other people focusing on getting rid of him fascinates me. His skill is undeniable. How much others' lack of skill plays into that is something I like to talk about and think about and try to figure out. How many of you sat watching Tribal and as they panned to Nick when his name came over, that oh fuck was precious. It's the last day on the edge of extinction. How many of you were watching the footage on the last day of Edge of Extinction, and as they moved through the different players, how many of you went, oh yeah, I forgot she was on this season. Oh wow, yeah, he was on. That's what happens to me. I get so focused on those who are playing the game so well and really enmeshed in it that when they go to these scenes of players that had played long ago, prior to the merge, etc., I forget that they were even part of this season. I am nowhere near as capable as some of the super Survivor fans who maintain all these details about who, what, and when, and can have access to them instantly. It's like with any information or academics, my perspective in life is there is no longer any need to learn and store everything. I think the most intelligent among us figure out and recognize that information's available. So if I want to find it, if I want to learn it, I know how to do that. So the ability to go about finding information is more important to me than storing it. And I don't know how that has benefited me or not over time. But I figured I'd just throw that out. It was an interesting thing for me to realize last night as I watched and thought, oh gosh, I forgot you were there. I won't say who, because it really doesn't matter. Oh, I don't know. Episode 13, season 40. How about entertainment during the pandemic? It takes my mind off of things, and I just enjoy Survivor. I'll remain ever disappointed that I was not a part of this season. I wish I were there to exercise some of what I talk about. And I truly believe to raise the level of gameplay, to stir things up in a way that viewers would beautifully appreciate. But maybe that's ego. Many of you will tell me that that's so. 80% of you who are listening to these videos have not subscribed to my channel. Please subscribe. Just hit the subscription button and hit the notification button, and you'll be informed when I have another video up for you to listen to. After you've subscribed, comment. Comment positively, comment negatively. No holds barred. Just say what you're thinking. That's what will make our exchange even more valuable. As I'm able, I'll create new videos responsive to that commentary. So like away, or dislike, on that rare occasion you may feel the need to do so. But either way, thank you.